Hi, Julie. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you, Miss Maggie?
Good. Do you see my pink screen?
I do.
Perfect. It says, what is a relative clause? And that's what we're going to be discussing today. So, we are going to be making sentences longer and more interesting using relative clauses. A relative clause tells more about a noun, kind of like adding a description. So, for example, let me show you. The man who was driving the car was tired. That part, who was driving the car, tells us which man. Okay, let's practice. I'm going to say the sentence and then you're going to read it after me. The African slaves trade, the African slave trade, which occurred from 1492 to 1820, transported millions of Africans.
Okay. The African slave trade, which occurred from 1492 to 1820, transported millions of Africans. The relative clause is going to be which occurred from 1492 to 1820.
Perfect. Yes. Okay, let's do the other one. Many Africans who profited from the selling of slaves joined the slave trade.
Many African rulers who profited from the selling of slaves joined the slave trade. That relative clause is going to be who profited from the selling of slaves.
Very good. Now let's do the other one. Oops. Let's do the other one. The ship that carried the slaves was crowded and unsafe.
Um, the ship that carried the slaves was crowded and unsafe. The relative clause is that carried the slaves.
That carried the slaves. Very good. Okay. Let me erase these drawings. Sometimes they get all in the way. All right. So now those sentences all gave us which one or who it was about. Now we're going to look for relative clauses in a short passage. I'm going to share the screen, okay?
Mhm.
And we're just going to choose two sentences from the passage. One is already done for you, but I want you to find one and change it using a relative clause. So, for example, I have one already there for you. Four slaves voyaged across the Atlantic, which was known as the Middle Passage, was a harrowing experience. It was the second or middle leg in the triangular trading routes linking Europe, Africa, and America. Men, women, and children who did not survive the passage were crammed aboard vessels as tightly as possible. Disease such as measles and smallpox spread rapidly. About one slave and five perished before reaching the New World, where they were sold. Ship captains who wanted to prevent the spread of epidemics were known to throw the sick overboard. Now, that was a lengthy little passage. This is our first one where we included the relative clause to connect our two sentences that potentially were two sentences. Now, can we look for another one, for another two sentences that we could put together with the relative clause?
Um, for the slaves, the voyages across the Atlantic, which was known as the Middle Passage, was a harrowing experience.
Yes, that's one. Perfect.
And then another one, the African slave trade, which was a triangular trade, sold almost 10 million Africans.
The African. Yes, very good. And I'm going to find you another one. Men, women, and children who did not survive the passage. So you found one and I found you another. Okay, now let's look, combine some sentences using who, which, and that. So you were able to point them out from a little paragraph. Now we're just going to put sentences together. So here's one. Almost 10 million Americans were sold during the trade. The African slave trade was a triangular trade. What can we do to that?
The African slave trade, which was a triangular trade, sold almost 10 million Africans.
Very good. All right, Julie. Now I'm going to read you one, okay? And you're going to tell me where we put the relative clause. The slaves came to the New World. They traveled through the Middle Passage. What can we add?
Hmm. The slaves who traveled through the Middle Passage came to the New World.
Yes, very good. And that wraps up our lesson today. Nice work. You used relative clauses with who, which, and that. Next time, listen for these. And what you read or hear, they make your sentences sound more grown up and detailed. All right. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Miss Maggie.